Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish Podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things weddings. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I, of course, am your hostess with the mostest on the Wedding Dish Podcast, Sarah Alapin, and I am also the CEO of Photos from the Hardy and District Bliss. And before we get started, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, we talked with Four Keeps Florals about flower pressing your bouquet or wedding flowers. And it was such a fun episode. I learned so much. So flag that to go back to listen to. And thank you all for tuning into the Wedding Dish today. Today, we are dishing with a financial coach who helps couples figure out money together without losing their minds. The incredible human behind Dylan Teaches Finance. Dylan Snowden, thank you so much for joining me today on the Wedding Dish.
Sarah, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to talk about this. Money is one of those things that we just either talk about too much or don't talk about at all. And I'm excited to learn some of these tips for myself.
Yeah, I think it's something that just you can kind of, if you're on your own, you can manage a little bit easier. But once you're in a relationship long term, you kind of have to right the ship and make sure you both are on the same page to keep it going for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah. And then into retirement. I mean, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's dig in. What is the most common money problem you see in couples?
Well, we live, as of taping, it's 2025. And in 2025, I look at my life and how different it is for my folks in the sense when they would live their life and go to dinner, they'd go out once or twice a week. They would maybe go to Walmart or Kmart to go do shopping for kids' clothes and all those types of things. And we'd go on an airplane and we'd fly to Arizona to see my grandparents. It was all very rudimentary, very simple. We'd have to go to a travel agent to get printed paper tickets before we go on that flight, right?
I remember those days.
Yeah, it's simpler, but also pretty wild that we go to that extreme to get a ticket. Nowadays, if I want to do any of those things, I can do them on my phone. And I could be in Japan in 11 hours eating sushi or Taco Bell delivered to me by a robot, probably. All of those things are available to us very easily. And because of that ease, what I see with a lot of clients is that we want those things. There's not a lot of boundaries. There's not a lot of stoppage from us making that happen. As I said 30 years ago, if I want to get on that flight on Southwest Airlines or American West Airlines back in the day, we'd have to make a phone call to Janet, and 20 minutes, 2 weeks later, she gave us our tickets. So that resistance has usually meant a lot more spending. And it's not like spending, like really actually going to Japan every week. I've been a financial coach for going on 8 years almost. And I would say most of the time when I meet with new clients, they'll say to me, I'm not a big spender. I'm not going to Paris every week. But the thing is, if you did go to Paris every week, you would know it was expensive. You'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to Paris every week.
Yeah.
But in reality, what happens is we go to Target 4 times a week for a Target run. So we go get a few things on Amazon, new batteries, something for the kitchen, or we get DoorDash because life is exhausting. We're working till 8 o'clock. All of those things are called spending leaks. And that is what is overwhelming. And then we see how much we actually save. And we're like, where does it all go? So for an individual, that's really hard. And especially for a couple, if you're working together to build goals, like save for a house or have children or save for retirement, that is a big hindrance for the individual, but especially for the couple in 2025.
I could absolutely see that. Yeah, it's so easy. There's no resistance to spending money. And we tend to want the newest, greatest, and latest thing. And in the way that our society is built, and things are not built to last in the same way. Like we were talking about earlier. We were talking about we have this little cottage that we bought, and it has like one of those ancient Maytag dishwashers, washing machines, and dryers. I think that thing is like 30 years old, and that thing is still running better than like we've replaced the washer and dryer in this house twice now. Oh, and we've only lived here. I mean, just like relatively speaking, that thing outdates our ownership of this house by a landslide.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just not built the same way. And it is so much easier to spend money. That's such a great point. And while there's a lot of like, buzz online about your weekly coffee isn't going to,
Sure.
or your
Save your
avocado toast,
retirement. Yeah.
but it's all of those things put together that we
Yeah.
aren't looking at because it's just, oh, well, it's only a couple dollars. It's not a big spend.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, that stuff can really add up. You're absolutely correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
We will
so
always have $8 for coffee. We'll always have $40 for a concert ticket or $200 to fix a door or whatever it may be in your home. But since we always think we have it, we're always saying yes. We're rarely saying no. We're not, our dollars aren't competing for each other. It's not a question of like, do I want to go out and get dinner or do I not want to? Well, the answer is yes. You're always going to say yes. But what I recommend for couples is a lot of times is having your money compete in the sense, do I want to do this or do I want to be able to take another day of vacation in 6 months when I go to Hawaii? Do I want to do this or do I want to be able to start supporting my folks financially with maybe $500 a month in certain ways? And we don't reflect on those goals enough. And that's what's cool actually about being in a couple is that it's kind of harder to do that as an individual. But if you have an accountability partner, a friend, someone you love, doing it with them can make it even stronger a lot of times in that process.
yeah, yeah. And my husband is definitely my accountability buddy.
Good. Good.
And I'm his.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Although I am very much like, well, if you deserve to be happy. If you want this, go ahead. Um, within reason.
Within reason. And that's the fine line, right? It's like figuring out what are the other things that also within reason that we
Yeah, but even talking it out really is part of being an accountability buddy. Even if the other person says yes, you're having to kind of rationalize it then with yourself. And you're realizing like, okay, maybe we should take like one less day here and choose a different hotel, like whatever the case may be. Or like, do I really love this sweatshirt that I just saw online?
Yeah. Yeah. Can I just say this? Everything you're discussing is a big part of what I think is critical is that you're being intentional with your money, right? You're thinking about that sweater and giving it thought or saying, okay, do we want another day of vacation? And talking to somebody is intentionality. And there's just too much ways to spend that's unintentional. It's like we're quickly solving a problem. Money is this problem solver. I'm hungry. Order food. I want to take a vacation. Let's get out of town this weekend. And money is the grease of the wheels. And we have to also say, well, wait, what else can money do for us? That's not just next week or next hour.
I love that. I feel very validated.
Good. And I always like to say this too. I've worked with over 250 clients in this time I've been doing this, and I've never once thought a client's money choice or decision is their fault. I don't, that might sound strange. I know online there's lots of people who like shame people about money and call-in shows and be like, why'd you do this? Why'd you buy that truck? Or why are you in debt? I can tell you why. We live in a amazingly huge capitalist society that shows us 5,000 to 10,000 ads a day. It is hard to make it through that. And we don't talk about money, as you said. So I've never heard when someone buys a house or buys a truck or got into XYZ kind of business plan, I was like, I don't think they're stupid. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. You're trying your best to survive. Now you want to say, I don't feel great about it. Great. Let's change that habit.
Yeah. But like, let's learn and move forward from here. I think that's
exactly
a great approach.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so much healthier than living with the shame. Like, I have a lot of people in my life who, when they have a money story that is shameful, it ends up that they spend more because they feel bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so removing that shame is very healthy in many ways.
Yeah.
I think it stops being a self-perpetuating problem, like avoiding going to the dentist is a self-perpetuating problem.
Agreed. I think it's interesting because we talk about couples of how to help them navigate talking about money is removing the shame from you're going on too many little golf trips with your friends. So what they need to do is say like, okay, that is kind of shaming them. But how do we not make you the money boss that you have to be wagging your finger? So I always say, like, when you want to change those money habits, isn't starting with the shame or the pointing, because they will also do the same. They will ammo up and say, like, oh, you know what? You're going to get your nails done too much. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And then it's just mutual assured destruction. Recommendation would be, well, you're a couple. Start with the goals. What do you two want to achieve together? Like, you're together for some reason. What does that look like? What is your future together? What do you want it to be? Which is a real fun exercise to get to do with clients, because they haven't done it a lot of times. We're always just trying to survive the next day, especially if you have parents or family or kids you're supporting. It's just like everything is just like survival. But instead, take a breath and say, like, write down what are the fun goals you want to achieve the next 5-10 years. And then from there, well, how do we do it? What do we need to change? What habits have to maybe change? If this is our most important thing, what should we do to make it happen?
I love that. And is that how you would recommend bringing up money when it feels uncomfortable, starting from like those fun goals?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it has to be not daggers out, because you might feel it. If you bringing up money, a lot of times it is because there's a problem. It isn't like, hey, we just won the lottery. Look what we get to do now, right? That is very rare. Lightning striking. What in actuality is that something is happening. We are bleeding out cash in a way that is not appropriate for our income, that we need to make changes. You're not eating top ramen before you go see Hamilton. That's not happening. Let's be realistic. So it is about being realistic to say, what are the things that you want to achieve? How do you achieve it? How do you get that down payment? How do you pay for a wedding? And then also, how do you make sure that everybody feels comfortable after having those conversations as well?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And that's a great point. Like, we do have to be realistic. You're not, as you said, eating top ramen before you go see Hamilton in all likelihood.
Mm-hmm.
You're dressed up. You're not stopping at McDonald's on your way. And, you're making a night of it. It's a special night. So that is, that, you want to be realistic. I love that. And that feels doable.
Your relationship with money doesn't change based on how much you earn. Yeah. I think my other tip with that being realistic is realistic with your time. A lot of times couples will have a money meeting and there's no parameters to it. And I always say the most important thing about having a money meeting is making sure you feel comfortable having that second money meeting, so that you feel like, okay, we feel good after that. Let's do it again. Because consistency, especially new couples, having that consistency early on is so helpful, so that you know that you're building up wins, repetitions. Money isn't this unusual thing. Before I was a coach, I used to do improv and comedy writing in New York and LA, and you'd have to get on stage and you have to step off the back line and perform. And it feels terrible the first 6 months or a year you do it, or 5 years, but you do it more and more. It's just commonplace. Like, when I talk to people, I say, what is it you do for a living? And I had someone recently who was a director for TV and commercials. And I said, you know what to do when you go out on set. You know how to manage that. And I think that is what money should be. It's like, you just need repetition. You just need to do it more and more. And being in a couple allows you to do it with a teammate. And then when new problems happen, you're like, oh, we know how to deal with this. We have a playbook. We have talked about this so much. It's not hard because it's not new.
I love that. Teammate. That sounds way more fun than, let's sit down and look at a spreadsheet.
Yeah. That is not a winning battle. Unless you're like both type A, then that might be an option for you. But usually two people, you don't have problems. If you both love going to look at spreadsheets already, then you don't have any issues.
That's true.
Hold on to that person.
I am not a spreadsheet girl.
Not yet. We're all young.
It's unlikely, but my husband is definitely a spreadsheet person. And that's fine. We can look at it. It's just going to be lots of clarifying questions.
Yeah. I think it's coming to the meeting, making sure everybody feels good before, during, and after. And the idea with money isn't to make it, a lot of people think, like, if I just had another $5,000 a month or $2,000, if I just made more money. But I'll tell you, that is never the solution. It is, I shouldn't say never. It can definitely be a solution for a lot of Americans. But in reality, with the people I see is that your relationship with money doesn't change regarding based on how much you have. Meaning that if we add another 3,000 to your income that comes in, you get that raise, we're going to spend it at the same clip, right? We're like, okay, we
Yes.
have more. So you have to be careful with it. And I'm really glad to work with people when they're younger, because I'm like, okay, if you manage this and know how to save at 25 or 30, that's going to be in your bones at 40 and 45, 50 when you are at your highest income earning years. Because you're going to be like, oh yeah, I didn't just burn through all my spending. I know when I listened to this podcast or worked with Dylan 10 years ago, I have a savings machine in place and I know how to save when income goes up, and I just don't burn through it.
Yeah. We may have to have you come back on the wedding dish to talk about money stories sometime soon. Because I feel like that is a big piece that I didn't include in this interview and I won't have time to talk to you about today. But I think that would be such an important topic because I don't think people understand that we all have our money story. And I'll share mine when I bring you back on if you're interested.
Oh, okay.
But it is so interesting how your money story really dictates how you spend, and it dictates how you talk about money and when you hide things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for clarification, like money, I talk about money stories all the time. Money stories being like how you grew up around money is something that is also in your bones. And so when you're in a relationship, you're with somebody who has a entirely different money story. They did not grow up in the same house, hopefully, as you did. So they have a different way of thinking about money, right?
Yes.
A little joke in there. Yeah.
You got me on that one. I was like in the deep thinking mode.
Yeah. And I ruined it. You're welcome. So yeah, your money story is should be clear to you and also to your partner, and that you can come to relationships and have very different money stories. The key to that success for couples, I think, is really identifying what are the important things you want to do together. Because you can still do that. You just have to see how that fits. But if you don't find goals that you both are matching, then what are we doing here? Right? Like, what do we want to do?
And I would imagine that it's important to share that money story with your partner so that they understand when you start to get stressed out about something, that's where that's coming from. I mean, it's like any part of your relationship, right? Like I traveled this way and you travel this way, and it stresses me out that you're the kind of person who shows up to the airport an hour early and doesn't have TSA pre-check. This is not my story, but
this is our story, my couple. Yeah, go on.
But like, think even just traveling, like how you show up to the airport, how you like, whether you check your bag, all that stuff can actually really stress people out and cause strain in the relationship. So your money story is kind of like that. If you think about, because I think everyone can probably relate to, we probably all show up to the airport differently in our relationship.
Can I steal that analogy?
Yes.
I love that so much, because definitely that is a thing that everybody does differently. And it's so concrete. Well, money can be like very vague things in the sense that like I might be somebody who waits to the last minute to pay a bill, or doesn't pay their credit cards off, or doesn't do this. And some of them can all be innocuous, like simple things, but it can still make the other person very stressed. So,
yes.
Sharing that. And then also finding a way to, I don't want to say solve it, but be okay with that. Yeah. Or let it be like, okay, if this isn't too much to give away. So I'll give you an example. Like my children have my wife's maiden or name. And for me, that wasn't a big deal. I don't really care about my last name and lineage and all of that. I keep getting asked about Edward Snowden every few weeks still. Maybe my last name's Snowden. And I'm fine with it, but I don't want to burden my kids with that question for the rest of their lives. So I was like, sure, take their name. And it wasn't a heavy lift for me. So I think sometimes when we talk about our money stories, we can think about things that aren't necessarily big shifts. Like if I know that my partner's really stressed, I come too early to the airport. Okay, maybe that's something I can adjust so that I can meet their needs as well. But yeah, talking about it is going to be key.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able to communicate your own backstory also is going to be key. Because otherwise it blows. The whole thing blows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not something we don't talk about money and like how much we earn, how much we save, but we also don't talk about our money stories and saying like, oh, so it's very interesting. I ask that question to every new client, prospective client I mean, it's like, how did you learn about money? Everybody kind of takes a second. They're like kind of blown back. Like, oh, well, they have the answer right away though. They're like, my parents didn't teach me anything, or my dad early on did this. They know they can write that script. It's like ChatGPT. They'll like, they'll go out, but they've never said it. They've never said those words in their life, but it has been waiting maybe for someone to ask them what it's been like for 30 years, 35, 40, 45 years. So it's extraordinary to see that and giving them their space to talk about it too.
Yeah. Okay. We're definitely after this. I'm sending you the link to get back on the schedule
Please do.
because I think this is an important topic. And we definitely should dig into this because I think it's just, yeah, it's so important. Like it's the pairing to this conversation, of course, because you have to be able to talk about and you have to understand. Yes. So we will make that happen, everybody. Don't worry. What do you do when one person earns more? Because this is a lot of people's current money stories.
Yeah. I would go to say like everybody really earns more, unless you two are both dentists in a practice and you're both seeing the equal number of patients every day, you are likely going to be earning different amounts. And so how do you negotiate that? Let's talk about different feelings about that. A lot of people come to me and they might not be the primary income earner and they feel maybe uncomfortable spending. They don't know how can I spend on myself? Not necessarily just for the family, because there's family spending, which can be good. It's like I'm paying for kids camp. I'm paying for our night out. I'm paying for this. But when it's maybe myself saying, I want to spend $1,500 to update my wardrobe because it's all old and nasty, that can be difficult for someone who maybe doesn't earn because they're not sure what the parameters are of like, what is my money, right? In that situation, I think it's also good to call out that like the way we think about supporting in a relationship is not just financial. I've said this before, we live in a capitalist society. Sometimes it'll make us think that we are just a number of what we contribute. So I want everyone to know and listening, it's like, just because you are not the primary earner, the most earning person in the relationship, doesn't mean the ways they are truly significant. So be mindful of that when you do want to spend money on yourself. Be mindful of that when you want to be able to go on vacation, when you want solo time, because that is a big thing that you do that doesn't have maybe living on a spreadsheet necessarily. I think when it comes to contributing, like sometimes it'll be a question. It's like, well, how do we think about rent? How do we think about car payments when one person is earning more than the other? What is a fair way to do it? I think the simplest way to think about it is to be equitable, to say like, okay, what is the percentage? Let's say for sake of numbers, one person makes $70,000 and one person makes $30,000. So one person would contribute a percentage. Like I've really made this hard for my numbers actually, because I thought it would be simpler in my head.
I know you should have done like 100 and 200 or something.
There you go. Okay, let's rewind the tape. Let's do 100 and 200. Everybody get their calculators out on their podcasting app. You would contribute maybe 50% and the other person would contribute more. Or excuse me, one person would contribute 60 or 40. And forgive me for not doing the numbers right, but the idea is that it should be attached to what your income is. I think that is usually the simplest way to go about it. And saying like, you do have joint costs, as I said, it might be rent, it might be mortgage, it might be car payment, childcare, XYZ. See if you can divvy that up based on your income. I think that is the simplest way to do it. But I think also know that incomes change. My wife and I have been she's worked for businesses. She's been a consultant. She works for a school now, education and for higher education. So our incomes change. So be aware that if you're with somebody for 50 years, it's a good chance it's going to change. It's going to flip on you. And so give each other grace when you're doing that. But I'd also say, make sure you give yourself savings at the same time so that you both are saying like, hey, we're both earning, or one of us is earning, and one is growing, and we're both growing together for our goals, rather.
Yeah. And that's so important. It's when Philippe and I moved in together, we actually did that because I was a teacher at the time. I was a high school teacher. So my income was significantly lower than his income. And he wanted to move into a 2-bedroom place in DuPont Circle. And I was like, I just can't afford that. And he was like, no, I don't think that that's fair to expect you to. And I was like, well, you're not paying for me. You're not going to bankroll me here. And he was like, no, we need to sit down and we need to figure out what percentage of each of our incomes this property would be, and actually run those numbers. And you can tell my husband works in some sort of math when I tell these stories. um, but he actually sat down and did that. And I was like, it made me feel so safe and protected. And it made me feel like if something happened in the relationship, I wasn't going to go under. Because that was like my big concern, is that I was going to be overspending, assuming that we would be in a relationship for, the long haul. And then what happens if that blows up and I have nothing and I'm just stuck?
Yeah, I think that is a big thing for couples, in the sense of like, if I am not the earner, how do I protect myself?
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think those are a lot of conversations with your partner, but also knowing that, like, what is your understanding of, if you have a prenup, what are your understanding for savings, making sure that you are okay in those situations. We always want to hope for the best when we're in a relationship, but also planning. Like, in reality, a job I used to have way long ago when I was out of college was disaster response. And I think that is kind of in my work now, that I think of like, I preach from a place of caution. People will say, like, when they want to buy a house, sometimes they'll be like, we've got 200 grand. That's our down payment. We can make it happen. I say, well, wait, what are the other goals you two have? Do you need to support family? Yeah, probably. Okay. Do you have an emergency fund? Because you have inconsistent jobs. You're working in as actors. Yeah, we should have to do that. So let's protect those situations so that you're not overwhelmed. And so for that individual, just as yourself in this situation, what do you need to get protection? Is it conversations with your partner, or is it, pocketing savings so that you are safe regardless of what happens in that relationship?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think everyone values that, right? Like, your partner wants to make sure you're safe too. That's what
Yeah.
makes a good partner.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times people will say, like, oh, I am up at night thinking about these things. And you don't want your partner up at night thinking about money. You want to be able to resolve that as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so with you on that. How can couples make a money system that feels fair?
I think it is really about having conversations constantly. It is those monthly meetings. I really recommend people, it's just a few simple things they can do, is put on their calendar. I can't tell you how much the calendar defines, if it's a Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, it defines really our existence. It's like, I have to be here. Like, this podcast, I was like, I have to be here. I know I have to be here.
Yep.
And I think what I've seen is having that on the calendar for 30 minutes at the end of every month, and then having just 3 things that need to be discussed. And, when I work with clients, I have a longer list that I help whittle down to what is the right things. But getting those 3 done and saying, yeah, we got wins. You need reps and you need wins. Are you going to solve everything in that first month? No. But I want you to feel comfortable, like, oh, that was good. So having that consistent conversation, not pushing it off, because if, quite frankly, we really can't. Like, if we look at a business, not saying couples are businesses, but if a business, being in a relationship or being alive today, it feels like we're just trying to make it through every day. Like, I come home from the gym at 7:15. I'm like, okay, I got 30 minutes to help the kids get breakfast, make their lunches, get them out the door. And then I need to do dishes. And I need to get ready for the podcast. If you were running a business like that, you would fail. You have to have strategic planning. You have to be like, what does next 2026 look like for us? And couples need to do the same thing. So think about that as not just like, okay, what bills are being paid, but really like, what do we want to be doing next year? And then from that next meeting, how do we get that done? What do we really have to do concretely to accomplish that?
Yeah. It's interesting. As you're saying this, I'm like, okay, so we base all of our like things, like meeting things, around when Cluzo gets his heartworm meds every month. Our dog. So he gets his meds on a specific day, and it has to happen every month on that day. So we do like our money check-in that day. I water the succulents that day.
Yeah. Consistency.
It's a big day.
Yeah. I love that. I wish I could bottle that right now.
But that way I'm never forgetting any of those things, because I'm never going to forget Cluzo's meds.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so funny. You've given me so many things to steal at this conversation, but I think there's something along the lines of like, what is that singular routine you have every month or every 2 weeks, maybe for some couples, that you know that it's a flag post, it's a flagpole or a tent post. You're like, okay, I need to put myself around this.
Yeah, and I won't forget. And that means I'm never going to run past, our credit card is due like 10 days after that. So we can, review it and just make sure everything's solid and all that. So it just makes it easier. And it's not tied to like the 30th versus the 31st versus the 28th or the 29th, depending on what the month is. Especially if you have like a job that is specific to, the schedule of the month, I think. But yeah, you're always going to take time to give the dog the heartworm medicine.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like having to leave work to walk the dog. You have those priorities that you have to put in place, and just you're saying that, hey, working on money is as much as a priority of taking care of my loved ones. I think that's great.
Yeah. Thanks. You can steal anything from this podcast. Feel free.
Great. Consider it taken. Artists steal from 50 different places. It's just considered, that's what a great artist is. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're just pulling together great little tips. What small change makes the biggest difference in how couples feel about their money?
The smallest change, I think, I think when it is talking about these things, it is so critical to talk about what you want to happen. I know I sound like a broken record at this point, but it is not pointing fingers. It is not doing that, because it's so easy to point fingers. It is so easy because it's clear. You're like, oh, this person is shopping more, or this person's doing this and shouldn't be doing that. So it feels like it's a concrete thing to say. But it's hard for somebody, regardless of their money story, to walk out of that and feel like, you know what? You're right. I do need to stop going to Target. Thank you so much for telling me. They're not an underling. If you're a manager and someone's doing something weird at your business, you can say like, hey, stop taking the garbage through the front of the Blockbuster. That's not a cool thing to do, as was the thing I saw when I was 25. Take it out through the back. That's a clear thing you can say concretely to do. So we don't want to do those types of things, even though it can see like, hey, this is where the bleeding is. You've actually got to examine the whole patient and say, well, what are we doing here? So I would say that. Here's something that's a hot take. I'm going to give you a hot take. The clearest thing I think couples can do to actually manage money that is not something that's even about their partner, and this is going to go off what you just said, Sarah, I would say stop using credit cards.
Oh.
I think credit cards are a great line of credit if there's an emergency, possibly. I'd rather have you have savings to do that. But what history and research shows that credit cards and reward points with it make us spend about 15 to 25% more.
Oh, yeah, I can totally see that.
Right? Everybody I know says that. Yeah, that's right. So if you're looking for savings and you're like, it's too hard to point a finger about Target or Amazon and everything, really a way you can do is just spend the money you have. Instead of taking that loan every month, instead of saying like, I'm going to make Sarah figure out this December bill next month, I say, use the money you have in your account. So that when you do spend, when you do go to dinner, when you do go on that vacation, you're like, do I have this? You have to, it is leaving your account that day. So you should have to think, do you have the money? If you don't have the money, you shouldn't be spending it, because you do have other things you have to buy that month. So that alone, I've seen that, and it's for most of my clients, they go to debit. It cuts back on spending. But you know what it does? They love the stuff they buy because they know they can do it, because they know it's the most important stuff. Yeah. And the slop that we get off Amazon or Target, which is nice, but not necessarily needed. And it's also making it so that we can't buy that next house. We can't save for that extra vacation a year. We can't support our folks. We do that. We support our folks, and we just get better stuff, and only the stuff we really love. So I know that's not a big take right now, that a lot of people we watch TV and we see credit card ads every third ad, but they're marketing because it's a great deal for credit cards. And I don't think a great deal for the average American.
Yeah. And I think if you're going to use credit cards, like, you have to monitor what your intake and outtake is, because otherwise
it's hard to monitor that. Yeah.
And it is. I mean, especially when you're in a, multi-person family. Like when you have kids that are getting a credit card because you need to put gas in their car. So
Yeah.
you give them your credit card. You have to, it just becomes more to manage. And when you're already managing so many things, I get it.
Yeah. I think my big key about money is that I want you to think less about it. I think you can put a lot of key things in place so that things get automated, have simple conversations about it so that there's fewer questions. We got too much in our life that's fun to do in our life that isn't about looking at spreadsheets, that isn't about maximizing credit card points, that isn't about figuring out how to make sure I get enough Starbucks to get another Starbucks for free. You can save more just by saving money rather than having systems for machines that they create for saving. Then you just have to think less about it, I think.
Love that. Well, Dylan, thank you so much for joining me on the Wedding Dish today. This has been such a fun conversation. We're definitely bringing you back to talk about money stories. But in the meantime, where can our listeners find you online?
I have a website. It's 2025. Websites have been around for 30 years. I have one of those. It's dylanteachesfinance.com. You can all learn about what I do. I have some great quizzes on there, information to understand if you're in a relationship, what kind of money person are you? What kind of money person is your partner? And then some tips on how to talk about it. Like we talked about those money stories. Here's some concrete ways you two can find a way to talk through those things. And on Instagram, I'm at Dylan Teaches Finance right there.
Love it. And we will tag you on our Instagram at the Wedding Dish Podcast when this episode comes out. And we will tag your website in our description, all the things. If you all would like to check out The Wedding Dish online, you can find us at theweddingdishpodcast.com, where we will be continuing to bring you juicy tips, stories, and all the good stuff. Plus, you can apply to be a guest if you'd like to join me and tell me about your wedding or whatever. And don't forget to tune in next week. I am chatting with another incredible human. If you like the podcast, give us a follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting app. And until we meet again, cheers, everybody. Thank you so much, Dylan, for joining me today. This was fantastic.
Thank you, Sarah. It was wonderful.
We'll talk soon. Bye.